Hey, alrighty guys. We have so far been solving quadratics. On Monday, you should have solved quadratics by graphing. This is when you use Desmos and you found the zeros, right? That's what you were doing for that one, okay? Yesterday, you should have worked on factoring. And so you reviewed how to factor and then setting each of those parentheses equal to zero and figuring out what the zeros are that way. Okay, there are two more methods. One of them is called completing the square, and we're actually going to do that one tomorrow. And then the fourth one is called the quadratic formula. And we're going to do that next week. But in order to get us ready for these two things, we have to do section 8.7 today, which is solving quadratics using square roots. Okay, because there's going to be some square roots involved when you complete the square and when you do the quadratic formula. So we're going to practice doing that right now. Okay, so speaking of square roots, let's talk about square roots really quickly first. First thing that I want you to know and I want you to remember. So we're going to review really quick. So go way back, old school in your brain, okay? Because we got to review something really fast. A long time ago, okay, you knew what the square root of 9 was, right? And a lot of you are probably already saying 3. But then as you got a little bit older, there was something that was added a little bit to it, and that was a negative sign. So the negative root 9 would equal a negative 3. So you just put the negative in front of the square root of 9, okay? And you know all kinds of square roots. Like you know what the square root of 25 is. You know what the square root of 36, the square root of 121. And some of you are really good at a lot of these, okay? But this was all review stuff. So remember, if there was no symbol in front, then we just thought our answer was always positive, okay? If there was a negative symbol in front, then we always said our answer was a negative whatever, okay? Here's the difference today. Today, you are going to be finding two numbers who will give you a square root that will give you a 9. And it's different this time, okay? Because x squared equals 9 actually has two answers. There's two solutions to that, okay? The opposite of squaring something is to square root. It cancels out and you get an x. They're opposites of each other. So if I was going to do the square root of 9, right, because I'm going to square root both sides to get x by itself, the problem is that I don't just have one answer, I now have two answers. So my answers end up becoming positive and negative 3, because positive 3 times positive 3 is 9, but negative 3 times negative 3 is also positive 9. Okay, so x squared minus 9 has two answers, and they're both positive and negative 3. Let's do that again. So x squared equals 49. Okay, if I'm going to square root both sides, again, I'm going to end up with, I'm off the chart. I'm going to end up with two answers, positive and negative 7, because positive 7 times positive 7 is 49. And negative 7 times negative 7 is also positive 49. Okay, so this was before up here, this review, right? When we had a positive in front, your answer was positive. A negative in front, your answer was negative. But now it's a little bit different. Okay, all right, going back to solving quadratics and what this has to do with quadratics. Let's talk about that, okay? So on Monday, we talked about and did some problems on graphing, okay? And if you remember on Monday, if your graph crossed the x-axis 2 times, then it had 2 solutions or 2 zeros. If your quadratic equation came down and just touched the axis 1 time, then you had 1 solution, okay? Or if your quadratic equation did not touch the x-axis at all, then you had no solutions, okay? Here's what that looks like in terms of the square roots, okay? So in terms of square roots, let's talk about x squared equals 16. So if I'm going to square root both sides, I'm going to get x equals positive and negative 4. So that means that my quadratic equation has 2 solutions, one at negative 4 and one over there at positive 4. Okay, if I did x squared equals 64 and I square root both sides, x is going to equal positive and negative 8. I have 2 solutions. What does it look like if I only have 1 solution though? What does that look like? So x squared equals 0. If I square root both sides, what's the square root of 0? Well, 0 isn't positive or negative. It's just 0. So that means this only has 1 solution. Now, that's the only number that's going to work for. A lot of people get confused. X squared equals 1. If you square root 1, if I square root both sides, this answer is going to be positive and negative 1. So the only time that you're ever going to get 1 solution is if x squared ever equals 0. Okay? What about no solutions? What does that look like? So x squared equals negative 25. Well, if you square root both sides, right, and you try to take the square root of a negative number, check this out. Let me get my calculator. If I did the square root of negative 25, I get an error. Something went wrong. You can't do the square root of a negative number. It's not allowed. Okay, there is no number that if I multiply it by itself 2 times, I'm going to get a negative 25. Let's just check negative 5. So what if I did negative 5 times negative 5? Well, I'm going to get a positive 25, not negative 25, like the original problem said. Okay, so if you ever get x squared to equal a negative number, that's no solution. Okay, so let's go try a couple of these examples and see what they look like. All right, so let's go do this one. How about x squared plus 5 equals 5? Well, we're going to have to go get x by itself. Let's see if I can make this. There we go. So let's go subtract 5 from both sides. And I get x squared equals 5 minus 5 is 0. Oh, I get x to equal 0. 1 solution. Okay, how about this one? 4x squared equals 64. Ooh, this is a tough one. So I'm going to have to go divide both sides by 4 first. And so x squared equals, better get my calculator. What's 64 divided by 4? I bet it's, it's a 16. And then when I square both sides, I get x to equal positive and negative 4. All right, how about this one? Let's get a little bit hairier. Okay, a little bit hairier. So 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. Let's go get x by itself. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides first. Okay, so 4x squared equals 25. Let's go divide by 4. And You know what? No calculadore on this one. This is going to be much, much faster without the calculator. Okay, so if I have 25 over 4 and I go square root both sides, I'm just going to pull this apart. I'm going to do the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. Now, you could probably come up with this answer a lot faster than it's taken me to explain it to you. So when it's in a fraction, pull it apart. Okay, what's the square root of 25? 5. What's the square root of 4? 2. So x is going to equal positive or negative 5 halves. Okay, let's go do that one again. Let's go do one like that again. All right, so let's go try this example and see if I was just checking my recording. I messed up a little bit right here. I got the wrong numbers. But let's go try this example and see if we can do that again. Okay, so I'm going to add 49 to both sides. So I have 100x squared equals 49. I'm going to divide by 100. And then I'm going to square root both sides. Right? I'm going to square root this, and I'm just going to pull it apart. So the square root of 49 is 7, and the square root of 100 is 10. So your answer becomes positive and negative 7 over 10. Okay? All right, there's a couple of other occasions where it's going to get a little bit hairier. Let's do a couple more. So how about this hairy problem? Okay, let's see. X plus 2 squared equals 9. Check this one out. So notice how the whole parenthesis is being squared. So when we go to do this one, we're going to square root that whole parenthesis. And then I'm going to square root the 9. So this square root and this square right here are going to cancel each other out, and you're left with x plus 2. The square root of 9 is positive and negative 3. So I have two answers. Remember, I'm going to have my bubble, my x plus 2 equals positive 3, and my x plus 2 equal to a negative 3. Because remember, the square root of 9 is two possible answers. Okay, so here it is equal to positive 3, here it is equal to negative 3. So when I subtract 2 from both sides, I get 1, and I get negative 5. Okay, let's go do that one again, because that's a little bit hairy. X minus 5 squared equals 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and square root both sides. And I'm going to get x minus 5 equals positive 4. And x minus 5 equals negative 4. We're just going to add 5 to both sides over here and get an answer of 9. I'm going to add 5 to both sides over here and get an answer of 1. Okay? So that's how those kind work out. The only other thing that you need to be careful about are some tricks. Okay? There might be some like tricky problems that show up. For example, how about this one? So 100x squared plus 49. Okay, so if I'm going to go subtract 49 from both sides, I get 100x squared. 0 minus 49 is negative 49. And when I divide by 100, again, I'm not going to use my calculator. I'm just going to leave it. But when I go to square root this, there's a negative sign underneath. And you can't do the square root of a negative number. And so this becomes no solution. So you just have to kind of be careful with those, okay? There's one last kind of problem that we need to go over, and that's the kind that needs your calculator, okay? So last kind of problem, here we go. Negative 2x squared plus 80 equals 0. Okay, let's go get x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 80 from both sides. So I have negative 2x squared equals 0 minus 80 is negative 80. Watch those negative signs. I'm going to divide by negative 2, and I get x squared to equal 40. Now, when I go square root both sides, do you know what the square root of 40 is off the top of your head? Yeah, me either. So I'm going to type it into the calculator. So we're going to do the square root of 40, and it tells us 6.32. We just have to remember that we have both a positive and a negative answer. Okay? All right. Uno más. One more. How about 2x squared minus 64 equals 0? So let's go add 64 to both sides. So 2x squared equals 64. When you divide 64 by 2, you get 32. And so now we need to do the square root of 32. And so the square root of 32, according to my handy dandy calculator, my answer is positive and negative 5.7-ish. Okay? All right, so I hope that makes a little bit of sense. What I would like to see you guys do on your papers, and then send me pictures like you have been, but I would like to see you do page 571, numbers 1 through 35 odds. Just the odd problems, but definitely go all the way to 35, okay? All right, happy square rooting.